headlines tonight. Energy Ministry says Uganda can sustain itself without importing electricity from Kenya.
The total number of people of mine who died because of hunger, they are pretty 28.
Over 30 reported to have died of hunger in Karamoja sub-region.
We are informing our people to be ready for those disasters.
Also, several crops destroyed after heavy downpour in Kasesa district.
Big left hand connects for Usyk. Usyk firing.
And in sports, Alexander Usyk beats Anthony Joshua with split decision to retain a champion's belt. Hello, good evening and welcome to CTV PM edition. Today is the 31st of August 2022. My name is Agi Uwase with Isaac Luchamzi on sign language. Let's take a look at some of the stories that we are covering in tonight's edition. The Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, Ruth Nankabirwa, has today revealed that Uganda generates enough electricity and that the country can also fully sustain itself. According to the minister, Uganda also does not need to import or buy electricity from the neighboring Kenya. Let's take a look.
Minister for Energy and Mineral Development Ruth Nankabirwa today inspected Isimba Hydropower Plant Dam, which had been shut down after massive flooding in the dam's powerhouse. During the inspection, it was revealed that two of the affected units, number 2 and number 4, had been restored.
Cannot say that a unit produces a specific megawatt. It will be between 35 to 45, depending on the circumstance.
When the power plant was shut down, it led to the load shedding throughout the country. The minister says they are now working around the clock to restore the third unit and the first unit.
In this incident, we were looking at restoration. And that's why the engineers here had the morale to keep on job in that dangerous situation. They had to evacuate water, huge volumes, almost a small lake was inside there.
Nankabirwa says once they have repaired the dam, Uganda will have more than enough electricity. After inspecting the dam, the minister also revealed that the Namamve Dam has been temporarily closed simply because it uses fuel whose price has skyrocketed. Nankabirwa says that they currently need 22 billion shillings to work on the Nyangaka power plant West Nile to generate enough power. Engineer Proskovia Njochi, the chairperson of the Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited board, says they still don't know the massive flooding came about.
Accidents do happen, but as Harrison said, it's how you plan for them and how you manage them. This was a test that has proved that UGCL has an emergency preparedness plan and they can apply it. It's not only on paper. So
the Isimba hydropower plant is currently run by the Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, who now have the task of restoring the dam to operate at a full capacity. Sarah Nakandi for CTV PM edition.
Members of the civil society have today spoken out against Uganda's national debt, which they have called a scary factor. According to the NGOs, the national debt, which currently stands at 73 trillion shillings, is a nail in the government's foot. They now want government to be more transparent.
In a press conference held this morning in Kampala, a group of civil society organizations including CIATIN, Uganda Debit Network and Transparency International have today spoken out against the 73 trillion shillings debit and revealing that they want government to be transparent.
Debt transparency, as I believe also to government, is very critical, but also for us as non-state actors, and also in providing accountability to the general public, enabling informed decisions by government, as well as investors to understand borrowing trends.
Enhance transparency during acquisition of loans so as to improve accountability for the acquired loans as well as economic linkages. Additionally, there's need to eliminate opaqueness in the tax expenditures and incentives by sharing information publicly, reducing tax holidays to ensure revenues.
The civil society organizations have also questioned the manner in which government is borrowing, and the nature of the debits.
We expect government to create a centralized data system on debt, that is, to create a debt register. In addition to new sources of funding, debt management is further complicated by contingent liabilities. Across the world, contingent liabilities have turned increasingly into explicit budget obligations due to the impact of pandemic-induced.
They've also accused government of wasteful expenditure, the high rate of corruption, with the low revenues collected to serve the debt acquired.
It will create a problem for mismanagement of those loans. It will create a problem that some of them won't be performing. Then it will also create a problem that a lot of money shall be tied in debt without the public knowing, and that's open to mismanagement, as you say.
According to experts, Uganda's public debt is projected to rise to 51.9% of the GDP in this financial year because the government needs to borrow to finance those key infrastructure projects, especially of transport, oil and gas sectors. Safi Mokele Baloku, CTV, PM Edition.
According to local leaders, over 30 people from Kathili Town Council in Kabong are believed to have died of hunger and other related illnesses. Locals here have also decided to abandon their families and children as they look for ways to survive. Let's take a look.
8-year-old Catherine Lemu from Kathili Town Council in Kabong district is one of the children who were abandoned by their parents just 6 months ago. To this date, she does not know their whereabouts. According to Lemu, her parents left after realizing they could not get any food for her.
She says actually the mother went to look for something to eat and she didn't return. Because you know, when you're home and you're suffocated and there is demand from the children and you cannot provide for them at that time, mothers are just deciding to go and they are not coming back. This is not only happening in this family, but there are also other families where we have found children alone, 2, 3 children, a child of 6 years and taking care of a child of 3 years and 1 year old.
She now stays alone at home without any food and has to depend on greens from the bush for survival.
House, no mother, no father, all of them are nowhere to be found, and even other siblings are actually scattered.
How has she been surviving? What's been providing the meals?
No one. She says she goes out, she gets some greens just from outside and she boils them and she eats them. That is what she has been feeding on.
Lemu is not alone in this manyata. We found 8-year-old Ikola Yomoe crawling after going for a long period of time without food. He says that all their cattle they used to survive on were stolen.
And in this manyata, for the past 1 year, people have been dying because of hunger, because there was no food. Can you see grapes are just around?
They have been feeding on greens. With the greens they just pick from outside, which actually gives them a running stomach.
According to Philbert Okemush, the mayor of Kathili Town Council, they have lost over 30 people in just 1 year due to famine. He now wants government to...
Weaknesses because there was no any food for people to eat to make them get its strength to dig. At the same time, also these caterpillars, the worms, came and destroyed a few crops people put it down. Still, that is what encouraging it is the continuation of the hunger even next year.
He now wants government to empower locals by giving them enough security and agriculture inputs like machinery to fight hunger.
From the effect of last year, December the 18th up to date, the total number of people of mine who died because of hunger, they have reached 28 who have died because of hunger. Malnourished people who are still just at the death of point even as I look at them. There are so many.
Although government has given some food relief, it has not been enough, and that is why Good Samaritans from Robert Kayanja Ministries are running to the aid of the people in Kotido, Kabong, Napak and other districts in Karamoja sub-region.
Everybody who loves life, everybody who knows that Karamoja is part of us, or Alua is part of us, there has to be lasting solutions. And this can only be developed, strategically. Food is security. Food is security. If you don't have food, forget about everything else, So the first time we took over 20 tons, and we are taking 50 tons.
The food that has been donated to these people has been mixed with all ingredients that are full of boosters that can help hungry people survive. The food has been given to the most vulnerable groups, but will this procedure of giving food to the people of Karamoja sub-region be sustainable, and for how long? The hunger in Karamoja sub-region has been mainly attributed to the changing weather patterns and climate change.
The Bishop of Namirembe Diocese, Kitio Lwalira, has urged the Church of Uganda to continue with the mission of preaching the gospel that brings hope to the oppressed, especially those grafted in absolute poverty. Bishop Lwalira made these remarks while preaching at All Saints Cathedral, which is celebrating 50 years since it became a diocese. What?
Jubilee under the Church of Uganda. The Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, Dr. Kazimba Mugalu, blessed the function. A guest preacher at the service and Archbishop of Namirembe Diocese, Kitio Lwalira, cautioned Christians to use the next 50 years to inspire mindset change to help fight poverty.
He has fought battles and he has come out victorious. If he has won great things, he calls us to testify about. It is about his greatness by living lives worthy of our calling. We need to recommit ourselves and ask for renewed strength to continue.
Lwalira also urged the church to spread the gospel of hope, especially to the oppressed.
Coming into the world to set free liberty those who are being oppressed, to proclaim good news to the poor, and declare the hour of the Lord.
The Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, Dr. Kazimba Mugalu, today revealed that the church has plans of fighting on the reduction of street children and improving on the lives of the people in slum areas.
Southern children who don't go to school in this area. 800 youth who have no jobs. 75 people are disabled in this area. And there are 1,200 single mothers. Namanya from North Ankole, Chiruhura.
Former Prime Minister of Uganda, Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, who represented the president, urged people to do good deeds.
Your acts of charity and compassion towards the needy and the disadvantaged in your communities demonstrated the true Christian spirit of love for one another. I encourage you to continue with such good deeds of compassion and social outreach in your communities.
Celebrations today were attended by several dignitaries, including the State Minister for Trade David Bahati, retired Chief Justice Benjamin Odochi, former Ethics and Integrity Minister Miriam Matembe, and many others. Safi, Mokele Baluk and Chris, Semale Musimakula for CTV, Pure Edition.
We take a short break, but we'll be right back with more news. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching CTV PM Edition with me, Agi Uwase, and Isaac Luchamzi in sign language. Now moving on, Kasese district has started experiencing intermittent rains which have become disastrous. The precipitation, punctuated by hailstones, has vehemently destroyed crops in various parts of Kasese district. Kasese is known for having flash floods which are often triggered by heavy rainfall.
For years, rivers Nyamwamba and Moboko in Kasese district, which hail from Mount Rwenzori, have for long been bursting their banks, destroying property and causing losses. Now, with the increase in rainfall, a total of 300 residents in Chabakazi Seo, Mohocha Town Council, have registered a great loss of their crops following a heavy downpour.
Most of the gardens have been affected. As I talk now, people had planted cotton, they had planted beans, they had planted sweet potatoes, but they're all washed away. In the near future, we are more likely to have hunger because most of the crops have been washed away.
According to the LC1 chairperson of the region, Lawrence Wambali, the current situation might result in waterborne diseases such as typhoid and cholera.
We are also anticipating that we are more likely to get diseases like cholera because I think most of the latrines have been affected by this too much rain because there was too much water moving around. So that's our worry.
This here is the stagnant water that has been contaminated in the same area community. Access roads have also not been spared.
We are informing our people to be ready for those disasters. If you have children and maybe you have somewhere to go, you can at least put them in a safe area.
You find someone digging the entire piece of land, like entire acre, without putting up trenches and terraces. Secondly, in the valleys, we used to be having some other pieces. In the valley, we used not to cultivate valley. We could live at least 7 meters away from the valley. But as I talk now, everything has been cleared. And the cutting down of trees has also affected.
According to the leaders, sensitization campaigns against the unwise methods of farming need to take place in the area.
Like it has started showing us, we should prepare enough. And one of the things that we should really be doing right now is embarking on creating clear way through for the running water. Those are drainage channels, especially in our communities.
The incident comes barely after the district has recovered from a dry spell that also withered acres of crop gardens. Recently, the Uganda National Meteorological Authority, UNMA, indicated that isolated showers are expected to continue until the end of the season. Tony Patila Humza, CTV, PM Edition.
In the regional news, at least 20 people have died following a long siege in Mogadishu orchestrated by the Al-Shabaab, and the body of former President Jose Eduardo dos Santos finally arrives in Luanda from Barcelona. Let's take a look.
At least 20 people have now died in the long siege that took place in a Mogadishu hotel between Friday evening and Saturday night. For over 30 hours, security forces fought with Al-Shabaab militants hiding inside the Hyatt Hotel and filling it with explosives. Authorities said more than 106 hostages were freed. Abdullahi Malini Gafo said he was inside with 2 friends who got up to leave a few moments before the attack began. Just minutes before the blast, 2 of my friends, may God grant them paradise, named Hassan Yalahau and Abdirashid, told me they would be leaving, but seconds later, they were both killed by the blast. The politician described the scene of the terror after the first explosions. People fled in confusion. They were all running towards the place where they thought they would be safe. The hotel began to fill with smoke and flames, and I immediately saw one of the hotel's bodyguards bleeding and another man wounded. The attack started with 2 suicide bombings, followed by an assault by multiple gunmen who entered the building, targeted civilians and later hauled up in rooms. Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda linked a group that frequently perpetrates assault to try to destabilize. The government claimed responsibilities for the operation. The hotel was largely destroyed during the battle, and its manager warned explosives could still be hidden inside. A plane with the body of José Eduardo dos Santos landed in Luanda on Saturday night. The former Angolan president, who was in power for 30 years, died last month in Barcelona, where he lived since 2009 and was treated. The arrival in Angola of the remains of José Eduardo dos Santos puts an end to a dispute that lasted since the 8th of July. The body was handed over to his widow, Ana Paula dos Santos, after a legal battle in the Spanish courts between two sides of the family. The older children, namely Tchize, Corinne Du, and Isabel dos Santos, were opposed to the body being handed over to the widow and the repatriation of the former president's remains before the elections on the 24th. Some Angolans gathered around the airport in the capital Luanda to celebrate the repatriation of the former president. Angola is a country that has lived through a period of great turbulence, and he is a leader who has worked for the pacification of the country, reacted Simao Matilde, a civil servant. The urn was taken to the former president's official residence in Luanda, where it will remain until the funeral, for which the date remains undetermined. August 28th, José Eduardo dos Santos' birthday was suggested as a possibility.
Elsewhere around the world, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has told his citizens to be vigilant ahead of their Independence Day. And rapper A$AP Rocky has denied 2 charges of assault with a firearm in connection with a shooting in Hollywood. We have more.
The Ukrainian president urged citizens to be vigilant ahead of the celebrations on Wednesday, 24th of August, which will mark 31 years of independence from Soviet rule. Mr. Zelensky said Ukrainians must not allow Moscow to spread despondency and fear ahead of the national holiday that is to take place exactly 6 months after Vladimir Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine. But he warned on Saturday in his nightly address to the Ukrainians, we should be aware that this week Russia may try to do something particularly nasty, something particularly cruel, and such is our enemy. But in any other week during this 6 months, fear, the Ukrainian president urged on Wednesday, 24th of August, which will mark 31 years of independence from Soviet rule. Mr. Zelensky said Ukrainians must not allow Moscow to spread despondency and fear ahead of the national holiday that is to take place exactly 6 months after Vladimir Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine. But he warned on Saturday in his nightly address to the Ukrainians, we should be aware that this week Russia may try to do something particularly nasty, something particularly cruel, and such is our enemy. But in any other week during this 6 months, Russia did the same thing all the time, disgusting and cruel. One of the key tasks of the enemy is to humiliate us, Ukrainians, to devalue our capabilities, our heroes, spread conflicts. Therefore, it is important never for a single moment to give in to this enemy pressure, not to wind up oneself up, and not to show weakness. Residents of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city that has regularly been hit by Russian missiles, will be under curfew for the whole of Wednesday, Regional Governor Oleh Sinhab said. Rapper Rocky has pleaded not guilty to 2 charges of assault with a firearm in connection with a shooting in Hollywood last November. The star, real name Rakim Meyers, is alleged to have pointed the gun at a former friend during an argument. Prosecutors say he later fired the weapon twice in the direction of the victim, who sustained a minor injury. The 33-year-old, who has had 2 US #1 albums, could face up to 9 years in prison if found guilty. The rapper, who had a baby with the singer Rihanna in May, appeared in court in Los Angeles on Wednesday. The star was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport in April as he returned from holiday with Rihanna. He was released 3 hours later after posting bail of $550,000. Terrell Ephron, who is part of the Rocky Mob Hip Hop Collective, identified himself as the victim and took legal action against his former friend last week, alleging assault and battery, negligence, and emotional distress. Mr. Ephron, also known as Rayleigh, alleged that Mr. Mayard had landed him to an obscure location in Hollywood to discuss a disagreement. The lawsuit claims that after a verbal altercation, Mr. Mayers pulled out a handgun and purposely pointed it to the direction of Mr. Ephron and fired multiple shots.
We take a short break and we'll be right back with more news in the world of sports. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching CTV PM Edition. I'm Agi Wase with Isaac Luchamzi in sign language. Now moving on to the world of sports, world heavyweight boxing champion Alexander Usyk has retained his boxing titles after beating England's Anthony Joshua in a rematch in a split decision.